So, welcome to, I don't know, Jay, we haven't really got a name for this. This is the first in our Code Untapped regular chat, catch up sessions where you and me just talk to each other about technology, things that have been happening over the course of the week. We're going to get some interesting people to participate in these going forwards. We'll answer cool questions about technology, startups, venture capital, entrepreneurship, all sorts of things. We're going to cover all sorts of things over this series of chats. I think firstly, before we start though, how about we do a quick introduction to who Code Untapped are and who we are and why we started Code Untapped? Because I know there's going to be people listening going, who are these two guys? Why am I listening to this? So, Jay, how about you give a quick introduction to yourself and why you co-founded Code Untapped alongside me?
Yeah, so I'm Jason Halstead. I've been a technologist for about 21 years now, financial technologist, and I've really enjoyed it. Yeah, I actually love coding. I love technology. I love building stuff, and um, coding and understanding technology has actually given me quite a comfortable life. And I just wanted to. One of the reasons um, why I joined with Ez to start Code Untapped essentially was all about getting more people like myself into the industry. Yeah, because that's one of the things that I didn't like about the industry. There was a lack of representation, especially people of color, and it was important to me that we had a stake in the new future. So that's really why I really wanted to get involved in Code Untapped with Ez. Yeah, so that's my little intro. So over to you, Ez.
So why did I co-found Code Untapped alongside Jason? So similar to Jay, I was a developer and a technologist for a really long time, 10 years in the investment banking tech space. And I was a co-founder of a fintech for 5 years, a company called Neighbor. And I was the founder and the CTO. And I'll be doing lots of talks around, the founder's journey, about what it's like to be a diverse founder. And one of the things I'd always talk about is how technology is shattering the glass ceilings. Within a business, trying to climb up that ladder can be really difficult. But anyone can set up a company now. Anyone can just sign up onto Company's House. They can write some code if they've got the skill. You can launch it onto the Play Store on AWS, and off you go. You've got a global business. But I'd be giving these talks, and I wouldn't see people who look like myself or UJ in the audience. And if they were there, they were generally serving drinks and canapes. Bear in mind, this was back in 2018, so this was a few years ago. But it made me really think: how can I be talking about all this great stuff, and yet I'm not seeing it? And what can I do? And I looked at other coding companies out there, and I thought there were some really great organizations who are doing a lot to increase diversity in technology, but it tends to be based on gender. And one of the things we wanted to do was to get more people of color, so Black coders, Asian coders, all sorts of different backgrounds in. And we were originally going to do that from the guise of almost like a Makers Academy type model. But for various reasons, partly because of me getting involved with Impact X, we started to move towards more of this incubator model where we would do innovation labs, workshops around product design, around coding skills. We would do these hackathons. And that seems to be the direction of travel for us for the time being. And I think what's amazing to me is we've positively impacted the lives of hundreds of diverse technologists from all sorts of backgrounds: male, female, Black, white, Eastern European, late stage careers changes, people just about to attempt their A levels, all sorts. And I think that's been amazing. And we used to talk about how the events we did would absolutely give us so much energy afterwards, right, Jay? Remember what it was like? Some of our first events, it would just be absolutely the buzz we would get off of it afterwards, having had this group of like 30 people tackling this crazy problem and just all the pressure around it and trying to get this really interesting idea off the ground, and just seeing them be so successful at doing it was just absolutely crazy. So that's why I co-founded Code Untapped alongside Jay, and that kind of gives hopefully a bit of an insight into our mission and what we're trying to do. But maybe we should talk a little bit about the journey we've been on, because where we are now, doing some really amazing stuff with organizations like Vanquist Bank, CGI Solutions, eSynergy, Amido, to where we started. Jay, how about you talk about the first hackathon we did in your studio in your garden?
Yeah, actually, yeah, I'm sitting in the place where we held our first hackathon.
Yeah, you are, right?
Yeah, it was funny actually, because I think we put a ceiling of like 25 people, because my studio is not very big and can't get people in.
Right.
So we thought, we put, and I think we had like 30 people sign up. So I goes, stop. We haven't got space. And it was funny because we said that, and then we also, because we were so worried about not being able to fit people into the studio capacity wise. Yeah, I cleared out my front room as well. Me and Ez, we cleared out the front room. We set it all up. So we had the front room set up. We had the studio set up. We were going to have 2 teams, and we were going to take them through this whole ideation session, innovation session, and get some, get them, showing them a bit of tech. And actually, I think it was like 7 people turned up. 7 people turned up, and it was like, but it was a good session, because that taught us our first lesson. I think is just not to ever put a ceiling on how many people can come to an event. Just let whatever happen. So that was really good.
What we found overall, though, was on average about 30% of those signed up would turn up, and that was a number that repeated itself apart from the next event.
That was an interesting one actually, because that next event was we actually cancelled the next event, didn't we?
We did. Yeah? We tried to charge for it, and just no
one was interested. Well, it wasn't that we were trying to. I think I don't know whether we had arranged it early enough or give people enough notice or whatever, but we just didn't get the response. So we decided, I think about a week before, to cancel it. Yeah,
that's right.
And again, it was going to be at my house, and we cancelled the event. We thought we told everybody about it, and then at about 9 o'clock, I was actually still in bed. I was about to take a shower. At 9 o'clock, my doorbell rang, and I thought, who's this? So I come downstairs, and there's like this young chap who was at our first event, and I goes, it's been cancelled. Ez, do you remember his name? Sean, that's it, Sean. And he was like, oh, but I've come all this way. And I goes, oh, but there's no one else here. There's only me, and I'm not even, I'm about to take a shower, blah, blah, blah. I goes, we'll arrange another one. He goes, well, I'm here.
And then he was supposed to be doing maths A-level revision that day or something, and he decided to come to our event instead.
Yeah, so I thought I couldn't let the guy down. He'd sacrificed, doing his maths revision and stuff like that. So I thought I better help him out. So I went upstairs. I brought him in. Went upstairs, got ready, came back down, and then for the next 3 hours, I was just giving him like my life story, my journey through technology, and the things that might interest him, all the different areas that I was aware of in what I'd been doing. And he got undivided attention for 3 hours. And then Ez was actually coming. You were actually coming to my house that day, weren't you?
That's right. Yeah.
To talk about some of the things that we were going to be working on, some of the projects that we were working on together. And then, so it's funny because then Ez came. We then took him to lunch, treated him to a nice lunch, a local West Indian. And we were talking about all the stuff that we weren't just talking about. It was interesting because we weren't just talking about technology. We were talking about a lot of the business ventures that we wanted to do together, and the plans, and how things were unfolding. And he was really soaking up all of that sort of information. And when he came back, we were planning our next event, which was at City Hall, wasn't it? It was,
That's right. It was a
yeah,
GLA.
yeah. And it was, yeah, the GLA. It was at City Hall, and we didn't really. We were sort of planning what was going to be the itinerary of that event and what we were going to actually introduce the cohort that were going to be with us to. And it was good that Sean was there, because Sean actually went through what we prepared on the day, and he proved that actually it could be done and there was real benefit and value in what we were going to deliver on that day. So actually he got a lot out of it, we got a lot out of it, and it really again infused us that, because after the lack of support that we had, we were thinking, you know, is this really something that we should be doing? Is it going to be received? And the fact that only that one individual was willing, yeah, to give up something to come on a Saturday, you know, and just focus.
I remember after that day, you were just like, I'm not sure if we want to do this
Yeah,
anymore.
that day, I was like, this is long, you know, where are our people? Well, we're trying to give them something because they're not interested. But Sean really changed. He really changed our perception, and just him being there. I think if it wasn't for Sean, you know, I don't know if we would be where we are now and carried on, you know, what we did with Code Untapped. So it was a fantastic that he came. So he was the linchpin there. Yeah.
Oh, I think we need to shout him out for that one. He was absolutely with that. If Sean hadn't come along that day, I think we would have said enough. This isn't working. People aren't really interested in it, and we wouldn't have gone on to do all the events, the workshops, the conferences. You know, we're working to place people. We've even got a workshop with Google coming up in a few months' time, which we'll talk about more in some in our later talks. But you know, none of that would be happening if Sean hadn't turned up that day and said, "Look, guys, I sacrificed doing my A-level revision to attend today. So can you show me something?" I think we had him working through some of the stuff we were doing for the GLA event, didn't we? So that was fantastic.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's some of the stuff that he was doing, right? I mean, what can you teach in a couple of hours? It's interesting that what can you teach in a couple of hours? Well, you can actually give somebody a pretty good understanding of where technology is and where it's going in a particular domain space. And I think that's what we did actually. And that leads on to, I think, one of the other questions in our polls actually, which was, you know, what language, if I have a look at that last poll, which was, what language do you use for coding? And I kind of want to change that question. I think if you're wanting to get into coding, what would be a good language to start with? So I think that's an even more appropriate question for people really looking to get into technology and really want to try out whether coding is for them or not. And we, in particular, we focused on JavaScript, and the reason we focused on JavaScript is because it's the language of the web, and you know, it enables you, or just learning that language and its companion technologies, HTML and CSS, just learning those technologies allows you to, you know, create websites, and that's quite a useful skill, and it gives you a bit of insight into, you know, into how data flows, into presenting data, into making that data interactive, making that view interactive. So it shows you start getting into concepts which you'll use later in all forms of development, in wherever you're going to go.
Well, it can benefit you in so many ways, right? JavaScript, even, you know, the work I do at ImpactX, the venture capital fund supporting underrepresented, diverse founders, I look after all the technology. So I look after our pipeline, which is all G Suite. And I write a lot of Google app scripting behind the scenes to automate a lot of our processing. It's all JavaScript, right? So that skill set of knowing JavaScript is so critical and is so flexible as well. And it's what I love about it, it's all open source. You can learn everything you want. There's material out there for you to study. There's open source projects that you can work on. You can look into the actual underlying libraries behind everything that you're doing. It's that level of freedom to discover and experiment is just unparalleled. And yet at the same time, you can have a real economic output and outcome from learning JavaScript. So I think it's an incredible language to learn.
It
It,
is. It
and it's
is.
been around for so long. I remember messing around with JavaScript back in Lehman Brothers in 2001. It's just like, it's incredible, and it's
Come a
becoming
long
ever
way.
more
It's come a
powerful.
long way.
A long, 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 long way. But actually, I think looking at that poll, and for those of you who don't know, on our Code Untapped LinkedIn page and our Twitter, we're starting to do regular polls around different technology, startup, entrepreneurial questions, just to get a sense for what our audience thinks, and what our users, where our community is. And I think something like 38% voted for JavaScript as the language that they use for coding, followed by Java, and then Python. There was other as well, but that's probably a combination of C# and the rest of it. But amazing that so many people are using JavaScript on a day-to-day basis.
It's really good. And I think as well, if you, a skill or a particular role that is really, really in demand and is something that's sought after by a lot of startups in particular, is the role of becoming like a full stack developer. And what is a full stack developer? Well, a full stack developer is somebody who's able to knock up an application, build an application front to back. Yeah. And that's a really, really useful skill, because it allows you, if you can build an application front to back, which means that you can build an application that, shows some information, store some information, retrieve some information, has some interaction, perform some function. Yeah. Then if you can do that, then actually you can actually prototype ideas. Yeah. So, and that's a very extremely useful skill to have, especially when you're working in the startup space, because you really want to iterate over ideas extremely fast. You want to know whether a particular idea has legs, if people will buy it, if people will use it, if people actually see value in that idea. So to be able to create something very, very simple, which doesn't have to be perfect, which is not built to be super scalable or anything like that. It's just built to see if a particular, if a particular problem can be solved in a particular way. Yeah. So something like having that skill to be able to build that application very, very quickly to just demonstrate a particular feature or functionality is extremely useful skill. So again, this is where the JavaScript suite of technologies works really, really well. And now that they've got this with Node.js, you've got JavaScript, what we say on the server side. It allows you to use the same language, that you would use to present your web pages, and to also actually do your server-side code, all of the logic, the actual server-side logic. And a lot of these technologies that work in this full stack way have come about over the last 10 years. So we've seen stacks like MERN and Mean, and you've seen languages like React and so forth, and Vue, and they've all come around out of the they're all like JavaScript family of languages, and they allow you to rapidly iterate. And especially if you look at technologies like React, which is Facebook's framework for building, it's a mobile and front-end ready framework, and that is really based on JavaScript. And with that one language and that one bit of functionality, you can build an application that is actually supported on Android, on iOS, and on the web. And being able to do that in one code base is quite powerful. So this is why we tend to start with these languages. And this really goes back to something that, as you were talking about, which was that the barrier to building something, building a technology application or function or feature or platform has been dropped. The barrier to building that has been dropped because technology has advanced so much. And even if we don't talk about things like no coding platforms and stuff like that, and just deal with real coding platforms, you know, it's really evolved. You know, if you look in the cloud space now, a DevOps engineer or individual, yeah, that individual is replacing the role of like 5 jobs
Yeah.
about 20 years ago. So you would have a systems administrator to manage your hardware. Yeah, you'd have a database administrator to manage where all your data resides and how that all works. Yeah, you would have a network engineer that wires up all of your systems together to make sure that all your hardware is talking to each other correctly. And now all of those jobs now are replaced by a DevOps engineer, yeah, a cloud engineer, yeah. And so what you have is where you would have a team of say 30 people, a multidisciplinary team of 30 people to build a meaningful application or platform.
Yeah.
You can have a team of 2 or 3 people doing exactly the same thing. And it's interesting that you see a lot of the new startups now have actually just that, a team of 3 guys or 3 girls coming together, yeah, and just building something that has real value.
No, and that's really interesting because one thing we always used to talk about, and you hear it a lot, was the 10x coder, a coder that can like increase productivity 10x. And I'm looking for this unicorn.
Who is
But
that?
actually, the frameworks that you just described, right, that we use on a day-to-day basis, enable that. Because instead of a 30-person team, you can have 3 people that do the same, that can output the same level of work. That's amazing. But I think that's a really good point to touch on, because it segues into one of the other polls we ran, which got a lot of engagement, actually. I thought this one was really interesting. And it was about how much experience do you think you need to have to be able to call yourself a coder? And the question was around 6 months, 1 year, more than 2 years. And what I found fascinating was how close it was. I think 6 months was 31%, 1 year was 30%, but the winner with 39% was 2 years. It was more than 2 years. What do you think about it?
That's a really, really interesting question, is because I mean, for me, it's you're a coder, yeah, when you can build something, yeah.
Right.
That's when you're a coder, yeah. So you can be a coder after a couple of weeks, yeah, I think. But so really, it's relative. It's the question has to be sort of phrased. It has to be put into some context. So if you want to work for, I don't know, if you want to work building software that runs power stations, then you're going to need a lot.
You need some experience, right?
Yeah? Because you need to write code that is bulletproof. Yeah, you need to write code that is maintainable, that is clear, that people understand. Yeah, so it really is. That question is really application driven. It really depends on the context of the coder, the context of what you're actually going to do. So if you're going to be building, you know, if you want to be a developer in a financial institution, one of the big banks or something like that, or a fintech startup, then they're going to want you to have a good understanding of the language that you're going to be coding in. And that probably does take, you know, 2 years plus to get that level of experience, to be really proficient and to really add value in that space.
I mean, back in the day, we would consider an experienced, a senior dev to be someone with 5 years experience. Yeah. And that was the way you had to have done 5 years before you could become a contractor. You know, and that was very common. In fact, I remember I've been at Lehman for 4 years and wanted to go contracting, and they just said, no one will take you. No one will take you. And then Lehman Brothers wanted to admit it, which is untrue. Exactly.
Which was a lie, yeah.
But then Lehman went into administration, and I spent a year with Lehman, just kind of helping out, doing bits and pieces here and there, not really doing very much hardcore coding. And then that same agent contacted me a year later saying, oh, you've got 5 years on your CV now. You'd be great as a contractor. What's the difference? It doesn't make any kind of sense. But I think what's great now is that we're focusing more on what people can actually do as opposed to what university did you go to?
Yeah, definitely.
How many years have you been programming for? It's like, no, look, show me your GitHub profile. Show me what projects you've worked on. Show me what you've contributed to. And that's what I think really talks to your original point. I agree with you. the minute you can lay down some lines of code, you're a coder, right?
Mm.
If you understand how applications work, what code does, and how to get an app, get a computer to output something based on some input that you've provided it to, and you're using coding to do that, you're a coder. Doesn't mean you're an experienced coder.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean you're capable of creating a scalable global platform, but you're a
Mm.
coder. And I think you have to distinguish between
the two.
those things. And then there's domain knowledge, which is, I know, something you like to talk about a lot, Jay, right? Which is,
yeah, which is really understanding what that application is built for. Yeah, because really technology in and of itself has no purpose. Technology should be there to make somebody's life easier. Yeah, it's that's the real purpose of technology. So, and that life, or that life is a domain. So what do we mean by domain? So, we have specific technologies for specific areas of business or work life. Yeah, so you have financial technologists who build, software relating to how, banks work and operate. Yeah, you have more what I would call like system engineers, or people that work with software that controls hardware. So these will be like control system softwares. You have all different types of areas where technology is applied to make the job, or to make a process more efficient, or run better or smoother. So that's really what we talk about when we're talking about a particular domain. And that's coming increasingly more important now, and understanding the value that the technology can bring to a particular problem. So that's becoming really, really, really important. Yeah, and just one thing I wanted to touch on as well is, based on what you said, in particular about what you said about 5 years. Technology in particular, the web and the mobile space is moving so rapidly. So some of the frameworks that people are using now aren't even 5 years old. Yeah. So when you talk about an experienced programmer having a 5-year, that technology hasn't even been around for 5 years. It's just for anybody to even be, so this is why what you said is so important. It's what can you produce as a coder? What value can you bring, to the problem by being a coder? That's what's really important, and I think that's what employers are really, really looking for as well.
There's something in that, and it comes to the experience piece and the impact that has on confidence, right? And this is something we're going to be focusing heavily on when we do our workshop with Google in a few months' time. But do you have the confidence to go for the big jobs if you don't have that level of experience? And should you, right? Which companies should you be targeting? What do you need to do to get into them? So I think this is something we can talk about in some of our future tech chats. Still trying to think of a title for it. I think Code Untapped 30-minute tech chat or something like that. I don't know. I'm a big fan of 20-minute VC, so I think we should do something very similar. But we've only got a few minutes left. So Jay, how about, as a sign off, just talk to me about something exciting that you're working on, or that you're looking forward to in the technology space at the moment.
I mean, there's so much stuff out there that's pretty exciting. Something that's really interests me, and this is because of the background that I have. I studied science in my degree. I did a physics degree, and so all of the stuff around quantum cryptography, that's really, really interesting. And I know, as you've got a thing about that, and you think that will change the game in a number of areas. But quantum cryptography is really, so I know that I'll let you talk about that, but that's something that's really, really exciting, bit of tech that's coming out there. There's always stuff happening in the AI space as well. So that's really big. But for me at the moment, it's just, I've recently code for me. The one thing I'd like to say is that coding is really a learning mindset. Yeah. And to be a good coder, you always want to learn the next thing, or the way to do something a little bit better. yeah, and a little bit more efficient. So you're looking for that next thing as well. So recently I've been learning for a venture, another venture that me and Ez are working on. I've been learning Flutter, which is a new cross-platform framework, building, you know, mobile apps and web apps and stuff like that. It's from Google, and it's fantastic, you know, and I've loved every minute of it. And again, it's that learning, it's that continuous learning and going through those trials of overcoming problems as well. And I think this is something that we're going to touch on again when we talk about the, especially when we talk about the, you know, the Google event that we're going to have and stuff. I think we'll lead on to that. And it's about having that mindset of continuous learning and continuously trying. I think that's something that as a coder, as a technologist, you need to have and you need to develop in yourself. I think that's something really important. Yeah.
I agree. And I think I've been saved by the bell. But I think it's time for us to wrap up.
You're going to sign off, isn't it?
I know. Look, everyone, I hope this has been interesting for you. We're going to be doing more of these tech chats, and it's just going to be us and some good friends of ours who work in the industry, catching up, talking about what's going on, and also covering the polls that we're doing on our Code Untapped LinkedIn page. We have another one running right now, which is a really interesting one. And it's all about, do you think having more remote positions within the tech industry will make it easier to find a role? And given what we're seeing with, you know, as we're starting to come out of the pandemic, is remote important? Is it something we should be continuing to allow? And what kind of impact does that have on technology from an inclusion perspective, but also a performance perspective? You know, what are the capabilities now that we can all be remote? So if you want to give us some feedback, please do vote in the poll, leave some comments, and we look forward to hearing from you. So that's this week's chat from me. I'm Ez. Thank you so much.
See you later from me.
All right, brilliant.
Catch you next week. See you later, guys. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.